What's going on, guys? Foresight Capital here. Today I want to show you how I draw out a chart from beginning to end using TradingView and using my simple trading strategy of key support and resistance levels to find price targets and find momentum stocks that I want to trade. A lot of you have mentioned in the comments before that you really like the Palantir chart that I've got, but you want to know how I arrived at those particular key support and resistance levels. So we've got a fresh chart here pulled up on TradingView. I'll actually share that in the link in the description. If you have TradingView, you can download it and mark it up yourself. If you don't have TradingView, I believe you'll still be able to view it. But this way you can follow along from the very beginning and show how I came to draw up the chart, because Palantir is one of those stocks that has been trading very technically over the past couple of months. So if you've been trading around the key support and resistance levels, you've really been able to make some nice profits. And I'll be the first to admit that my trading strategy is very basic. I've never been one to try to time the bottom of the market and sell at the absolute top, but my strategy's always been if I can pick up an extra couple percentage points when I buy and an extra couple percentage points when I sell, that really compounds over time and still leads to outsized returns without having to do too much research into a stock or try to time the market perfectly. So the first thing that I like to do when drawing up a new chart is start at the 1 hour time frame and then work my way back to the 1 day time frame to see if there are any overlapping key price targets. So all that I do when I look at a chart is just find areas where there's been a lot of price action in the past and go ahead and mark that with a horizontal line. So we can see here that there's been a lot of price action right around this $30 per share range. So if we actually draw a horizontal line all the way across the chart here, we can see that we've touched this roughly $30 per share line multiple times in the past. Now there have been some brief spikes above that with hourly candles, but those tend to be outliers. But if we see the overall trends, they tend to come up and stop right around the $30 per share point and then do a bit of retracement. And then once broken above, it's acted as support multiple times, meaning that roughly this $30 per share mark is a really key level for Palantir, at least on the hourly time frame. We'll go ahead and pull up another horizontal line here, and we'll start talking about this next level down that we've used as resistance multiple times in the past, and that's really around $29.50. We can see that when the price didn't quite make it to this $30 per share level, it did see a bit of resistance right around the $29.50, so we can feel pretty confident that that's going to be a key price point for Palantir in the future once we break out of the range that we've been trading in. And all that I do is draw a few different trend lines at the areas where I'm seeing a lot of price consolidation. So we can see here right around this 2760 level to 2770, we've got yet a lot of price consolidation going on there as well. So when we had the big run up, we actually used 2770 as support multiple hourly candles and then as resistance multiple times throughout this trend. Yet again, we can see that Palantir does break above 2770 occasionally, but it tends to fade right back under, and we can see that recently it's also used that as resistance yet again within the trend. So I put a little bit of recency bias too on what my overall key support and resistance levels are, because they can change a bit over time, but you still want to keep in mind what's acted as support and resistance in the past, because you can come back and touch a trend from a year ago and have a bit of a reversal in an overall trend. So we just continuously mark up these various price points that tend to attract a lot of the price action in the stock, and then that's when we go ahead and back out to the 1 day time frame to see if we're seeing the same thing going on within a daily candle as we are within the hourly candle. A lot of times you'll see some overlap. Times when you wouldn't see overlap between hourly candles and daily candles is when you're seeing a lot of the action going on pre-market or post-market, meaning that it's probably low volume trading going on. So you might see big spikes in post-market and it might run up from $30 per share to $33 per share, but by the next day it's opening up at $29. On an hourly candle you'll see that, on a daily candle you won't, because you'll only see intra-trading day hours. So we're going ahead and marking up all of these key support and resistance levels. So the next thing that I like to do once we break into the daily time frame is just get rid of some of the price targets that don't necessarily make sense on a daily time frame but did on an hourly candle. For instance, if we take a look at the chart here, we can see that 2260 is a very key level for Palantir. I would argue that it's actually the most key support level for Palantir of all of the price targets that we've got going on. It's been used as support many times over the past couple of months, but what's very interesting about any time Palantir touches 2260 is that within the next trading week, it hits 2770 to the upside. So we can see here that it was used as support, and within the next 2 trading days had already broken above 2770. We can see that back at the beginning of January, we touched 2260 yet again, and by the 13th of January, we're touching 2770 to the upside. And yet again, we made a run towards 2770 after touching 2260 on March 8th. And by March 15th, and that included a weekend, we were already running up on 2770. So 2260 has been a very key price point for Palantir and will continue to be a key support level. The next level up is 2460, and we can see that it's been used as support and resistance throughout this entire trend that's been going on basically since the end of November. So we're going to keep that level around. The next one that we drew was 2530, and to me this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It breaks right through a lot of intraday price action. It would create a lot of noise around 2460, so we're going to go ahead and back that out. Because when you're drawing out these key price points, you want to make sure that you've got at least a little bit of room to make some profit in the trade. For instance, you don't want to buy at $29.30 and sell at $30.30. It's 3% on the trade, but if you have any sort of trading fees, that will eat you up over time, and you're likely to set up a bad risk-to-reward trade. So we already know that 2770 is a very key level for Palantir. The next one that I would look at getting rid of is this 2940 that we drew. I really don't see a whole lot of relevance on the daily time frame, so we'll go ahead and back that out. So now we've got really 4 key support and resistance levels for Palantir drawn out. We've got 2260, 2460, 2770, roughly $30 per share, which has acted as daily resistance multiple times in the past. And then a little bit out of play right now is the $38 per share range. Now, some people would say that potentially the resistance is a little closer to 40. I would argue that the 2 days that basically hit 38, failed to break it, and then started this big downtrend or a big resistance for Palantir that we're going to have to look out for in the future. So once we've got the couple of price targets drawn out on the chart, the next thing that I like to do is go add my indicators like moving averages. And moving averages are pretty much the only thing that I use as an indicator outside of support and resistance levels. So I had 3 moving averages on my charts, and I use simple moving averages. I know a lot of people like to use exponential and put a little bit more weight on recent price action. I've never really found that that actually benefits my trading style in any way. So I really just keep the 50, 200, and 9 period simple moving average. So I'll go ahead and input these and make them a little bit thicker so they're easier to see. We won't actually see a 200 period moving average on Palantir because it hasn't been on the public markets for 200 days, but I'll go ahead and input this anyway just so you can see how I have it set up. And once we have this, these 3 lines drawn, what these indicate to us is just overall price action between trends. So we can see that if we did buy at this $24.60 per share level, expecting it to be used as support on this little bit of a downtrend, we may not have actually bought at $24.60, seeing that Palantir had just broken below the 9 period moving average. Just as a general rule of thumb, if a stock is trading above its 9 period and 50 period moving average, it's in a very bullish trend. However, if it breaks below the 50 period and the 9 period moving average, we tend to see a lot of downside action and a bearish trend starting. We can see that happen here when Palantir was trading at 38. It was trading above its 50 period and its 9 period moving average, but over a couple of days it sold off, broke below both of those, and then continued its downtrend all the way to finding support at our key support level at 2260. So using the moving averages, you have to get used to how to trade them, but if you're buying a stock on a downtrend that's just broken below one of these moving averages, you may think twice about buying until you reach a very large key support level where you're likely to see a turnaround. As we can see here, Palantir didn't exactly hold 2460, and it had just broken below the 9 period moving average. So the next bit of trend that I would expect to see is a continuation down to 2260, and that would be where I would start entering. And the only other indicator that I really like to use is Fibonacci Retracements. Now, I won't go too deep into Fibonacci Retracements because it could really be a video of its own. In fact, if you're interested in learning how Fibonacci Retracements work or how the Fibonacci sequence works, leave a comment down below and I'll make a separate video on that sometime in the future. But all that you really need to do is identify the top and the bottom of a shorter term trend and draw the Fibonacci retracement to get not only price targets above and beyond that trend, but also intra-trend price targets to take a look at. So for instance, if you think that the very top of this uptrend was at 33.50, which was previous all-time highs, you can come up and click at 33.50 and then come down to the low of that trend. And let's say that you think that the low of the current trend that's going on is actually going to be the bottom of this candle at about 21.15. You can come all the way over to the side of the screen, draw down to 21.15, and you've now got a Fibonacci retracement to show you some price targets between the key price levels that you've identified. So all of our green lines are still here, but we can also see that there are some other price targets in between those, like a 38.2% retracement, which is at about $25.88, a 78.6% retracement, which is actually at $30.88, so actually just above our price target of $30.50. But what Fibonacci is primarily used for in my trading strategy is to find basically price targets above and beyond the previous trend. So we can see here that a 161.8% retracement from this 33.52 down to 22.15 gives us an upside target of about $41.12, which Palantir actually did come up to hit intraday. Now, it never actually closed that high and it faded back down quickly before we could see another retest of that level, but it gives you many price targets above and beyond the price action that went on during the trend that you drew it on. So we can see that there is a $41 per share price target that Fibonacci would indicate could come into play in the future, and then the next price target above that is 53. Now we'd really have to dive a little deep and make an 8 to 10 minute video, I think, on how this all works for it to make a whole lot of sense, but just know that if you use Fibonacci retracements and can pick the top and the bottom of a trend, you can identify some intra-trend price targets as well as some price targets above and beyond the trend that you drew from. So basically, we've redrawn the chart that I've been following for some time on this channel. Again, I'll link it in the description below if you want to kind of download it and play around with it. All this is very simple though. I don't use a whole lot of channels. I don't use a whole lot of other indicators, and there's just a lot of things that you can add to charts that don't add a lot of value, and if anything, they'll keep you from making trades that you really should be in. And you're never going to beat the market as a trader if you've got all of your money sitting in cash all the time. So the most important thing is to be in the trade, but you do have to understand at least general trends. And again, if you can pick up an extra % or two on the buy and an extra % or two on the sell, that really starts to add up over time and can really make a big difference in your trade. So I really hope that this video brought you some value. If it did, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, consider subscribing. This is the first video I've really made like this, but I will make more like this in the future and go a little bit more in detail on any particular section if you want. Always leave your comments and thoughts down in the comments below. Appreciate you stopping by, and catch you in the next one.